Hi, I'm Carol Graham with Praying for Miracles with Carol. And if you have been following this channel at all, you know how much I love sharing miracle stories. I've got a lot of miracles that have happened in my life and a lot of stories to share. Today's story is going to be one that, like all of them, is very exciting. And it has to do with my husband when he was in a motorcycle accident as a teenager. And how Psalms 91, which says, "For he shall give his angels charge over you, to keep you in all your ways. In their hands they shall bear you up, lest you dash your foot against the stone." And as a young boy, growing up in a minister's home, he knew that verse and he understood Psalms 91 is a psalm talking about our protection that we have, and specifically here, how our guardian angels protect us. Stories are wonderful. We remember stories, we relate to stories, and of course, true stories are always exciting, especially when they are miracle stories. And that's what this story is. When my husband was a teenager, he lived in a town that had a lot of steep hills. And of course, what fun for young teenage boys on their motorcycles to go up and down those hills. I mean, this was, it was exciting. It was what they did on the weekends. And one such time, he was riding his bike with two other buddies, and they were coming down a very steep hill. And as they were approaching the intersection and noticed that it was a red light, my husband Clayton, his buddies were in front of him. And Clayton went to hit his brakes and nothing. No brakes, nothing. He was pumping and nothing. Now he started to scream, "Stop the traffic, stop the traffic." But of course, between the roar of the engines of the other bikes and the fact that these buddies of his were in front of him, and even though he was trying to wave his arms to indicate that he could not stop, nobody heard him. So he knew at that point, not that it would have helped him anyway, but he knew at that point he had two choices. He could either go straight through the red light and hope that no one hit him, and it was a busy intersection, so there was a lot of traffic coming from, the two opposite directions. Or he could try to negotiate a right-hand turn and possibly slow him down a bit, and he might be able to crash into something else. He didn't know what was going to happen. So he decided he was going to turn right. And as he did that, he hit another car head on. And when he hit that car head on, the angels picked him up, pole vaulted him straight into the air off of his bike while the accident happened on the ground below. Now this is where it gets even more exciting. When he was thrown up into the air like that, he stood still. And you know that when you throw something up, it comes down. And when you jump up, you come down. And when you hit another car and you're thrown from that car or whatever, even if you're thrown into the air, you do come down. But he didn't come down. He stayed there in midair as he watched the accident happen. And people were pointing their fingers and looking up. This was a matter of minutes, not just a couple seconds that it takes an accident to happen. When he was thrown up into the air and the accident was happening beneath him, he was held there for seconds while the accident transpired. And then he didn't fall. The angels, I guess you could say, carried him. They lowered him, and he landed gently on his feet. Now, by now, a crowd had gathered because cars were stopping and people were actually looking up. His buddies on their motorcycle could see him suspended in midair, and nobody could believe what they saw. It was unbelievable, as miracles usually are. And Clayton said that he actually, when he looked down and his buddies were looking up, he waved at them. So, I mean, can you imagine what that must have done to the people who were watching this transpire? So as soon as he was gently placed on the ground, he walked over to the man, the driver of the car that he hit, and he asked the guy if he was okay. Well, can you imagine the guy's response? I mean, here the guy was probably very nervous, thinking he killed this kid, because he hit him head on, even though it was not his fault. And he was speechless. All he could do was nod, saying that yes, he was okay. And many people witnessed this accident, and it was in the local newspaper. And no one could dispute that it happened. No one could dispute that it was divine intervention that protected him during this accident. It was a miracle. And you know what? Even more exciting than that story is the fact that his buddies, the two buddies that he was riding that Saturday on their bikes, one of them was not a Christian. And as a result of what happened, he asked Jesus into his heart. I mean, that has been decades ago that this happened. And it still touches me today, knowing that God's blessing, protection, anointing that is on our lives never lessens. It always is fresh. It doesn't get stale. The miracle stories that we have that have happened in our lives, share them. Share them with your friends. Let people know that God protects us, that God has guardian angels that watches over us, that we don't have to be afraid. Just as Psalms 91 lists several different things, including the plague. One of the verses in that psalm says that no plague shall come nigh my dwelling. We can be protected. We can be protected from sickness, from disease, from trauma, from accidents, from so many things if we choose to believe God at His word. Thank you for listening, and if you haven't already subscribed, I hope you subscribe to the channel. Also, go to my website, prayingmiracles.com. You'll find lots of stories there, lots of encouragement, and I thank you for listening.